Good morning. Grace Spees here, Executive Director of the Farmers Branch Chamber of Commerce. Today we're hosting Metrocrest Services CEO, Tracy Eubanks. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning, Grace. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for being with us. First, we'd just like to start with give us an update on the work that you guys are doing through the pandemic and how that contrasts to a normal day prior to pandemic and your current level of work.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we're doing. And thank you, Grace, and the Farmers Branch Chamber for all the support. During the pandemic, you need all your friends to help kind of push out the message. You've done a great job of that. So thank you. I don't remember what it was like before March for us, really. Most people that know us know that, our approach really hasn't changed from the pandemic, but our approach is all about helping families in a crisis. A lot of our families that come see us are at the verge of being evicted. Their lights have been turned off. They don't have food for their kids. Maybe a senior, who's lacking healthy food. And we always help with that crisis. And then we also work with families on financial education, which includes budgeting and spending plans, employment credit scores, everything to help a family be more aware of their financial situation, which most of us did not get that training when we were in school. And so I think we all can benefit from that. And then we also do a workforce education component. So we want to make sure folks have an opportunity to move into livable wage jobs with quality benefits with that employer and to go back to school if they need to. We work a lot with Brookhaven, the Brookhaven campus, as well as we provide GED and other types of training. So that's kind of our model. And while that's not changed, our mission has not changed during the pandemic, it certainly has changed the way we approach helping families in Farmers Branch and Carrollton and surrounding areas. And the main thing is just volume. In mid-March or so, a lot of the folks that we serve who are in service type jobs lost their job immediately. And they may not have had benefits. They may have had 2 or 3 part-time jobs or 2 or 3 jobs within the family to pay the bills, and they were just gone. They worked at restaurants and hotels. They were cleaning houses, or any job, frankly, at that point in mid-March and beyond, where people were losing their jobs. So our objective has been the last 7 months now. I guess it seems like an absolute eternity, is to make sure folks in our community, our neighbors, don't lose their homes, that they are able to stay housed. Most of the families we work with have children. Just to give you an idea on volume, in a normal year, we're helping 12 to 15,000 individuals in the Metrocrest area. This year, we'll help 25 to 30,000 people. Most of that is coming, of course, in the last 6 or 7 months, and almost half of those are under the age of 18, so a lot of kids. So we want to help them stay in their home, to be housing stable, which is meant for us paying rent, not just 1 month, which is typically our model, but paying rent for multiple months, and also making sure families have healthy food. And so we've kind of adapted our system to do, on-phone social work. So we're not doing interaction face-to-face, and we're doing drive-through food distribution every day because the volume is so great. We're actually outside in a parking lot with tents and all kinds of cooling devices and such to make sure people stay comfortable. So it's been a crazy time with, food distribution up 250%, rent being paid out 800% up. So it's been unique for everybody, obviously.
That's awesome. Have you guys seen a solid uptick in donations as well to help balance that out?
We have. And, we live in an amazing community that's very supportive of nonprofits, not just Metrocrest, but all the great nonprofits in our area. Immediately, the community stepped up. It was a disaster. People recognized this disaster. You didn't have to explain the disaster. People knew people were going to need help. And so our donations were extremely high initially. And that helped us because, it takes a while to write grants to get foundation money. And so that lagged a little bit, although that moved faster than normal, it still lagged. So donations from individuals in our community allowed us to say yes to all the families that came in that truly needed help to ensure that they stayed in their home, they had healthy food. So yeah, it's been very encouraging, certainly the first few months. I think as disasters begin to lengthen, we all get tired. We want to hear about COVID anymore. We all have our own challenges as well. People that were doing well economically in April and May not be doing so well today. So we're always looking for opportunities as it relates to funding, and our community has really stepped up.
I really want to relate to that point about, the fatigue of pandemic. It's something that I'm from Florida, and so hurricanes come around every year, and it seems, there's always this initial outpouring right in the middle of
Mhm.
like on the heels of a crisis, but then people don't realize the impacts are for 3 6 months a year to
Yeah.
actually rebuild, recover, and it just something else catches the news or our attention and our dollars. And so I think it's really important to be able to stay top of mind, if you will, as an incredible resource that you guys offer the community, and for
Yep.
people to keep giving and to keep volunteering is really important. Have you guys seen a shift since school started back?
A little bit, and what you're referring to, we call donor fatigue. We get a little bit tired of being asked for money, and certainly if any of your viewers are on my email list, I apologize for hitting you up so much. But we want to make sure we keep saying yes to people that have a great need. And we have seen donor fatigue, like what you must have experienced in Florida, where there's a crisis, there's a disaster, let's help immediately, but then let's move on. And for something like this pandemic, there's no moving on anytime soon. And so we've been very, very fortunate that over time, as individual donations have begun to decline a bit, that foundations have stepped up, our cities have stepped up. City of Farmers Branch has been an amazing partner in this process. CARES federal money has been available to nonprofits, which is kind of allowing us to continue through the fall and help people during what we think is going to be a very difficult season. And with school starting back, I would say we've been a little bit busier on the food side. A lot of families with kids, those kids rely on school food. And, we have about half of our CFB kids or so that are at home and half are remote. And so I think there's some concern about the ones that are remote getting access to food. The schools are doing some grab and go type meals. But I think we're seeing more families come through here, which is great. We want to make sure when they come through here, they leave with a week's worth of food for everybody. And so, yeah, school starting back, we were concerned. I guess the biggest impact on us for school starting back was we lost a lot of our volunteers. We rely heavily on volunteers. Our staff here is absolutely amazing and has been amazing during the 6 or 7 months. But we really rely a lot on volunteers. And once school started back, we lost the teenagers and their parents. And so we're having to look for people closer to my age to fill in for us to make sure that we can continue to provide services.
That's awesome. I have another question about your staffing, particularly. I read in an article, and I believe they were quoting you, that at the beginning of this, you committed to ensuring and that your employees would stay employed. I think number one, that's very powerful as a leader. I'm sure that there's a lot of stress on you as a leader, because I know you have a very compassionate heart for obviously the community, but in order to do that, it also takes the heart for your staff. So talk a little bit about, that resolve, that decision, and how you made that commitment to your staff and what impacts you feel like it had on your organization.
Yeah, here we can't do the great work we do without amazing people, and we do have amazing people. They do the heavy lifting. I get to do easy stuff like this. They're actually meeting with folks and helping in very, crisis type situations. We felt it was important. We made two commitments actually. Right when the pandemic hit, we knew that we're in for the long haul here. One was to our employees, that we would not lay off, we would not furlough, we would not cut hours, we would not cut pay. We just felt we're in this together. We would find a way. It's up to me and others to make sure we had the funds to continue to do that, because we knew that not only were our employees very worried about their situation. I mean, they could easily have been furloughed and laid off and been, evicted and so forth. We didn't want that to happen. And so we felt that was important. I think they really appreciated that, obviously, because they didn't have to worry about that, because their job is stressful enough as it is to then have to worry about, will I have a job? Will I have a place to live? Will I have healthy food? So I think that was an important commitment that we made. I think our employees really appreciated that, especially as they saw so many others that they know losing their jobs. Another commitment was to the people in our community, our neighbors, our customer, the people we serve, that we were going to say yes. We were not going to say, no, I'm sorry, we can't help you stay in your home because we don't have enough funds. We were going to find a way to make sure we helped our community. So I think we helped our community the most by helping the neighbors that needed help and helping our employees to ensure they did not lose their job. And we've actually hired people. We have more employees than we did at the beginning of the pandemic, It's unfortunate in the sense that we're having to have more employees because we're so much busier. In the nonprofit sector, you'd rather be in a declining business than a growing business when it comes to helping folks. We'd love to see poverty and food insecurity decline to the point where we're not needed, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
I just tell you, I mean, I'm a person who wears kind of their heart on their sleeve. And I mean, that story, when I read it in the article, and even when you just share now, it makes me tear up, because I can imagine, number one, as a leader, the burden that places on you to, guarantee. And again, the exposure that your employees have to seeing the real loss and the real time implications in a way that, many people only see reported on the news, the level of unemployment, the impact of homelessness, but that they really tangibly experience, and that you can, as a leader, make a choice to help quell that fear in them and give them that security that their job is here, that their paycheck is going to be there. Way to go, Tracy. I really respect and admire that about you. So,
yeah, thank you.
And I want to continue to just talk about leadership. Obviously, we're with the Chamber of Commerce. We have a lot of various nonprofits, charitable organizations that are doing all kinds of things throughout the community. You guys are kind of the primary hub for food and rent assistance, but I work with several organizations, including Moms in the Making, who struggles with infertility. We have, Woven Clinic, churches. Nonprofit businesses are different than for-profit businesses. And you came from the corporate world and made this transition into the non-for-profit world. What wisdom or advice could you give to somebody who is in this business model to help them navigate the new way of doing business?
Yeah, I think, and as you said, I'm relatively new to the nonprofit sector. I guess I'm just finished my 7th year. And so it took me a long time to get here. I finally
7 years is still new.
Yeah, well, compared to spending the first 30 years of your career in business, I finally found my way to the right place, I think. I think the nonprofit sector is very similar to running a business. The difference is, and I used to run a company called MAPSCO, and for those of you that maybe are a certain age would know MAPSCO, we had great brand recognition and people were passionate about our product, but nonprofits take passion to a whole different level. And that's probably the biggest difference, is that the mission nonprofits have, it is emotional. It is about your community. It is about things you really care about. And so you've got to be able to blend a good business sense and fiscal responsibility, servant leadership, other things I think lead to successful nonprofits with a passionate mission. And you got to be able to stay true to your mission, stay true to your core values, and be able to do so when things are tough, like in a disaster, and when things are emotional. Because in the end, what we do today is important, but making sure what we do today for tomorrow's success is equally important. So we got to make sure we're planning ahead. And I find that a lot of nonprofits don't stay true to their mission. It's like a business that all of a sudden starts making products or providing services that don't make any sense. They do it because they can. And we get in trouble when we do that. So just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do it. And nonprofits are just as guilty as everybody else. And because nonprofits typically have fewer resources, you can't make many mistakes in the nonprofit sector. And so I think nonprofits being true to their mission, their cause, being very concise internally and externally in terms of what they do and what they don't do. And then having a good blend of staff from the nonprofit sector and the business sector and maybe the government sector. So you have a good blend of people. Here we have some folks that went to college to be social workers. They wanted to enter the nonprofit space. We also have some folks here like me that came from the business sector. We have folks from government here, people of wide range of ages and so forth. And so I think having a good mix of staff and volunteers is really important for a nonprofit. I love the nonprofit space, and I think even a business guy can succeed here. But it is different from a passion perspective. We all get emotional. We all cry a little bit. We all worry about families that, did we help them enough? Are they going to be living in their car if we don't do more? We worry about all those things. And we have a lot of what we call spirited discussions about a lot of these cases. And in the end, we want to do what's right for people. and then we stay focused on that. We can always do better. That's kind of the thing here is that, while we think we do great, we can always do better.
That's awesome. And I want to just continue this conversation on leadership. This has really, shaken a lot of people to the core for those who manage a business, manage a nonprofit. What skills or character qualities, you mentioned passion, but what else have you noticed that you've developed or had to develop and maybe even help your team develop in order to navigate, in terms of just character skills, training, expertise? What are you giving your team to use as in their tool belt?
Yeah, I think I used the term servant leadership earlier, and it's one of those terms that people often talk about. And I don't know if they actually do it as to the degree they should. You have to be servant leaders in a nonprofit sector because you're dealing not only with employees, you're dealing with a lot of your community. I mean, you are very integrated with your community. You need to be there to listen and to serve. And volunteers. I mean, it's one of the things that I stumbled on when I first got here was that volunteers didn't necessarily want to do what I told them to do. And so I had to adjust slightly. And I learned to be a servant leader more than I had been before. I thought I was before. And I found that having that kind of style, being very transparent, being very open book, there's nothing that we don't share here. This is our community's place. This is not my business. This is not our nonprofit in terms of employees. It is the community's place. And we need to make sure that's constantly clear. So whenever pre-COVID, at least, you saw Metrocrest everywhere all the time. You got more of us than you wanted from, we go to every event, we speak wherever we can speak. It's because we want to make sure people know that this is not about us. This is about the community.
What do you do personally to stay mentally, emotionally, physically sharp and resilient? What kind of boundaries do you have? How do you self-care, and how do you advise, your leadership team to self-care, to stay in this thing for the long haul, so that as there's donor fatigue, how do we avoid, employee and leadership fatigue?
One of the things you can do as an employer for your group, and you can only have so much control over this, but we try to pay a competitive wage. For instance, we're moving to where no one here works for less than $15 an hour. We've been moving the wage up every year, and so we're up to 15. So if you start here, no matter what the position is, you'll make at least 15. We provide healthcare benefits. You don't have to worry about healthcare. We provide matching 401k. So we want to make sure that for folks that are working a lot of hours in a stressful situation, that they don't have to worry about certain things. That they are going to have benefits. They are going to have a retirement fund and other types of benefits. We provide a lot of personal time off. If you need a day of self-care, you're going to get a day of self-care. We need you to do that. During the pandemic, we actually provided all of our employees additional emergency personal time off. You have a lot of employees that may not have many hours. And early on in the pandemic, maybe they were afraid to come to work for a bit. They were uncertain. But they didn't have any time. We didn't want them coming to work if they were afraid. So we gave them extra time. So everybody got paid. So that's important, I think. And for me personally, in our position, my type of position, I work an extraordinarily large number of hours and always have. And you've got to be able to balance that. And I am not the best example of balancing as I should be. I've always had a regimen of exercise many times every week. I've done that my entire life since I was a kid. So it's easy for me. I read a lot. That's good for me. I spend a lot of time with my family. I enjoy hanging out at home, watching a show with my wife every night. And so those things jazz me. My family's all in this area, so I'm doing a better job of visiting with family. My dad just turned 82. He and I just took a trip with my son to Estes Park, Colorado. We drove up and spent a week and had a great time. So things that maybe a few years ago I would have not have slowed down for, I'm learning that we need to slow down, take care of ourselves. I can do a lot better, and I'm certainly trying, but I encourage my staff, take the time, take the day. Don't let all your vacation and personal time add up to some astronomical number. It's there to be used. That's important to us.
Do you have any boundaries with your phone, email, things like that? Are there times that you do just shut off to spend time with your wife, your family, have your own quiet time? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So, with the phone is pretty invasive in our lives now. No matter what we say, we allow it to dictate a little bit of what we do at home. I don't work at home anymore, though. I work a lot of hours at the office, and I go home at night. I do not work. I do not work on the weekends. If I do, I'll come in here for a couple hours, but because I live nearby. But when I go home at night, I do unplug. I'm able to turn off work and enjoy my time with my family. Same on the weekends. I've got where I love my weekends and to have my routine of what I do on the weekends, and which includes all the things I mentioned: visiting my dad, exercising, reading, hanging out with my family. So I think we all need those boundaries. The boundaries are harder now because of the connectivity we have, but I think it's important. We've got to get away. Our life is not about work.
Yes. And again, just taking into consideration, speaking to, people who are number one in leadership, number two in a nonprofit sector, I think it can be really hard to not feel guilty. Like, hey, I have a home to go to. And, I know me personally in the middle of the pandemic, I have business owners who, are confessing, to me personally that they're between paying their mortgage and paying their employees, and, that not working makes them feel guilty, and they lose sleep at night. And so I think that it's important to understand that we're going to best serve our community when it's kind of the oxygen mask principle. We do have to, take care of ourselves and be able to be grateful for what we have, not guilty, and have those boundaries so that you can stay sharp and stay resilient and continue to serve. So thank you. I always like you mentioned reading several times. Mm-hmm. I always just like to know, what are people reading personally, professionally to grow yourself? What books are you into or have you been into in the last 6 months or a year?
Yeah, I've always been a reader. My dad taught college, and so we had books all over the house. And one of the little nuggets, early in my career, I was a book buyer for Barnes & Noble in New York City. So I've always had a passion for books. I read fiction and mysteries most of my life. The last 10 years, I've been reading more nonfiction. I have a great interest in social issues. I've spent some time working with the SMU Human Rights Department. I've been down for human rights master's classes and speak to some classes on occasion. So I'm reading a book right now. It's on the bestsellers list called Caste, C-A-S-T-E, by Isabel Wilkerson. It's about the history of the caste system in the U.S. and how it compares to other systems throughout the world. I've read a book called Hand to Mouth, which it really is a great book because it outlines what it's like to really live in poverty, not having a car, working 2 jobs, being abused, that type of thing. Often we serve folks, we don't really understand what they go through every day. Another book, again, these are all social issue books, I suppose. Evicted is about the eviction process and how it's kind of an endless cycle in some of the big cities. And then on the business side, the books start with why. I think we all talk about why, how, what, and I think we all are really good about the hows and the whats. We forget about the why, and I think that, again, going back to the nonprofit sector, why are we here doing what we're doing and not losing sight of that? So I read that book regularly. I had the golden circle up on the board somewhere. We talk about it. Let's not forget our why. And I think that's important. So those things I'm reading right now. I love fiction, but I've kind of gotten stuck on a lot of nonfiction that kind of relate to what we do and helps me understand the people that we serve a little bit better.
That's awesome. I'm a little curious about these social issues books. That sounds like number one, heavy reading, but again, I think that we do live in a society that can be a little desensitized, or we don't really understand. We can have sympathy for something, but I've personally been recently listening to Brene Brown, and she really talks about how you can't really have compassion without empathy. And so I imagine that really, takes that deeper, journey into empathy and being able to have the greater passion and compassion that you have for what you do. So
I can recommend books whenever you're ready.
Appreciate that. All right. Well, anything else you'd like to say? Anybody you'd like to thank? Your employees? Any last tips, thoughts? Open mic. It's yours, Tracy.
Sure. Well, I would just like to reiterate, we do have amazing employees here. They do all the heavy lifting every day. They deal with issues that I never have to really see because I'm not qualified to do it. And I'm always amazed that folks decide to enter this sector when it is a very stressful sector, often not rewarded like it should be. And one of the reasons that we do pay well and provide good benefits is we want them to reap the rewards that others in the for-profit sector would reap. We have great volunteers. So we have an amazing community. We really appreciate Chamber support. City of Farmers Branch has always been very supportive, both staff and council. We really appreciate that. We're in this together. One of the things I always recommend to nonprofits as they start growing is, make sure you don't become dependent on one particular funder. Same for the Chamber business too. You don't want just a few big members and not many others. You want diversity in your funding, and that's important for us so we can stay true to our mission. So we really appreciate all the support, Grace, you provide us and the Chamber provides us. And we're glad to be here doing this work, and hopefully we'll get slow here sometime in the next year or two.
I like what you said earlier. It's one of the things that you hope that, your services are needed less, but, again, it's very powerful, very impactful for what you guys do for this community, because you guys are the hub for Carrollton, Addison, Farmers Branch, Capel. I mean, if somebody needs food or housing assistance, I don't know that there's any other organization in this region that they have to turn to. So that you guys provide such comprehensive care to both children. I know you guys have an end child homelessness program, all the way up to the level of senior assistance you provide. I mean, what you do is just a comprehensive mix of community outreach and community service. So I am sure that that's a lot to have to juggle and manage, but thank you sincerely for what you do. And how can the business community or anybody watching this, obviously the website's up here on the screen, donate, volunteer. What do you guys need most right now?
We are struggling with volunteers because, again, a lot of folks either are fatigued from volunteering too much with us, or kids are going back to school. So we have a lot of volunteer opportunities to work in our pantry, to work in our warehouse, to assemble food boxes. So plenty of opportunities there. We are going to continue to be busy with pandemic, so we're always soliciting donations to help us get through 2021. And then if someone wants to do a food drive, either a literal food drive or a virtual food drive, we have a list. You can just go to our website or email me, call me, and I'll get you that list. We have donations every day coming in for food. We do have to purchase a lot of food, but we get a lot from the community. And I would say one of the biggest ones is advocacy. Make sure, while you and your viewers may know who we are, a lot of people don't, or maybe have heard of us, don't know exactly what we do. The more people that know about us, the better it is for us. So whenever we have a need, a real significant need, there's a big crisis, that more folks can come out to provide assistance.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Tracy. We really appreciate it. Happy to share and to continue to promote you guys in the community and advocate. So as always, let us know if there's anything we can do for you. And again, just a huge thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Grace. Appreciate all the work you do.
Thanks.